Tessa's in-laws demanded a DNA test to prove her 8-year-old daughter was really family. They said it in front of her. "We need to be sure she belongs with us," her mother-in-law added. Tessa didn't shout. She just said, "Understood." 3 days later, their lawyer called, and they went pale. Tessa used to think Christmas disasters only happened in movies. Then she married into this family. She walked into her in-laws' dining room, her husband Jordan, and their daughter Ava, and the first thing she noticed was the smell. Not cinnamon, not pine, just tension, thick enough to slice and serve with gravy. Her mother-in-law, Marilyn, was already seated at the head of the table, smiling in that tight, Botox-adjacent way she got when she was about to ruin someone's holiday. Her father-in-law, Harold, hovered beside her, slicing the ham like it had personally betrayed him. And there was Ruth, Jordan's grandmother, smiling at Ava with real warmth. The only person in that house who didn't treat the child like a visiting exchange student they hadn't signed up for. Jordan barely got his coat off before he was summoned to the kitchen. "Can you help with the rolls?" Translation in Tessa's mental subtitles. Tessa doesn't deserve backup at critical moments, so it was just her, Ava, and the firing squad. Tessa sat down, trying to pretend her spine wasn't stiff enough to snap. Ava slid into the chair next to her, legs swinging, eyes bright. She was 8. Still hoping Christmas magic could overpower family dysfunction. Tessa admired her optimism. "Oh, Tessa," Marilyn trilled. "Did you bring the dessert? I worried you might forget." Translation. "You're incompetent, but I'll hide it behind concern because it's Christmas. Strike one." Harold, her father-in-law, muttered, "She tries her best," under his breath. Tessa wasn't even sure he meant for her to hear it. Strike two. Across the table, her sister-in-law Sandra's daughter Bella, same age as Ava, twirled in her sparkly dress like she was starring in a commercial for Holiday Princess of the Year. Ava watched her quietly, hands folded. She never needed spotlights, just kindness. Then, right on schedule, the universe proved it had a dark sense of humor. Jordan stepped out of the kitchen doorway again, momentarily out of sight. Perfect opening for cruelty. Harold cleared his throat, straightened in his chair, and said, "We need a DNA test." Just like that. Like he was announcing the potatoes were overdone. Ava froze. The whole room did. "We just want to be sure she's really family," he added, eyes locked onto the child. Marilyn leaned forward, smiling sweetly. If snakes wore pearls. "We need to be sure she belongs with us." Ava's breath hitched. Her shoulders folded inward. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just shrank. And that was somehow worse. Inside, Tessa burned hot enough to melt the Christmas candles. Outside, she was ice. She looked at her daughter, her baby, trying to make herself small enough to disappear, and something inside Tessa clicked into place. Not rage, not shock. Something colder, sharper, final. She looked at them and said, very calmly, "Understood." Silence detonated across the table. That was the moment something shifted. In Tessa. In them. In the whole room. Marilyn blinked, annoyed she hadn't gotten the meltdown she'd clearly been salivating for. Right then, Jordan stepped back into the room. "What did I miss?" he asked lightly. Harold jumped in instantly. "Your wife is being dramatic." Marilyn added, "We just want to confirm she's actually yours." Ava flinched. Jordan's face went still, scary still. "What did you just say?" His voice was low enough to rattle bones. Sandra shrugged from across the table. "Don't act like you've never wondered." He stared at them like he was seeing strangers. Dangerous, delusional strangers. "We're leaving," he said. "Now." Marilyn clicked her tongue. "Oh, don't be ridiculous." "You don't talk about my daughter like that," he snapped. "I don't care whose house this is." Harold lifted his chin. "We're just being honest. You don't even know if she's really yours. We deserve clarity. Your wife has given us reasons to question things before." The room went dead still. That was the line. The real campaign. Months, years, of little digs wrapped into one final stab. Tessa stood. "Ava, get your coat." The girl obeyed silently, brave and small and holding back tears she didn't understand yet. As they walked out, Ruth, sweet, sharp, 90-year-old Ruth, pressed her hand to her mouth. She looked ashamed to share blood with the people at that table. Outside, the night was cold, but it felt cleaner than the air inside that house. Jordan buckled Ava into the car. She sat staring at her mittens, small and quiet and hurting. "Mom," she whispered, "did I do something wrong?" Tessa swore she felt her heart crack in half. "No," Tessa said. "Not one thing." Ava nodded slowly, but she didn't believe it yet. Not after hearing her own grandparents question whether she belonged. Tessa climbed into the front seat. Jordan took her hand hard enough that it hurt. Behind them, Christmas lights glowed in the windows like a lie. Tessa thought walking out would be the end of it, that they'd shut the door, drive away, and escape. But she was wrong. They weren't finished. Not by a long shot. And she had no idea what they'd already set in motion, or how far they were willing to go. If her in-laws' Christmas stunt was a hurricane, then the years leading up to it were the slow, ominous wind everyone pretends isn't a warning. People always assume the worst moment in a story is the beginning. It isn't. The beginning is the part you mistake for normal. Tessa met Jordan when she was 21, the kind of age where you still believe 2 cups of coffee count as hydration, and a group project can't actually ruin your life. They were in the same program, both overworked, underslept, and trying their best to look like adults. He had that earnest, slightly nerdy charm that made you think he actually read all the assigned chapters. She had the survival instincts of someone who grew up navigating complicated people. Somehow, they fit. He told her early on, like date 3, that his family was a bit much. That's what he called them. A bit much. Tessa didn't understand what a bit much really meant until much later. Spoiler. Understatement of the century. She was studying in a city far from her own family. She thought when they got married, she'd get the movie version of in-laws. Awkward at first, then warm and supportive, maybe baking cookies shaped like her initials. Instead, she got Marilyn and Harold. The first time Tessa met them, Marilyn told her she looked different than expected, and Harold shook her hand with the same enthusiasm you'd offer a parking ticket officer. Sandra, her sister-in-law, looked Tessa up and down like she was evaluating a contestant on a cooking show she already disliked. But Jordan was sweet and supportive and in love with her. So Tessa pushed through. When Ava was born, Tessa was hopeful. In-laws soften when there's a baby involved. That's what the movies say. Turns out movies lie. They lived 20 minutes away from Marilyn and Harold. Close enough that Jordan felt obligated to see them weekly, but far enough that Tessa could spend the car ride practicing deep breathing like someone preparing for a court deposition. Jordan believed in family duty. It wasn't love. It was guilt shaped like loyalty. He'd grown up with parents who measured affection in corrections and attention in criticism. He didn't like them, but he felt responsible for them. It was a strange, painful dance. Tessa tried to make it easier. She became the perfect daughter-in-law. Polite, helpful, smile on even when it hurt. She brought dishes to holidays. She cleaned their kitchen without being asked. She sat through stories about how Sandra was the perfect child who never raised her voice, never made mistakes, and never disappointed them. When their elderly mother, Ruth, needed help, Tessa was there. Marilyn barely visited her. Harold didn't lift a finger. Sandra didn't have time, whatever that meant. So Tessa showed up. She brought Ava. She cleaned Ruth's kitchen. She changed light bulbs the older woman couldn't reach. She listened to Ruth talk about her garden days and her favorite books. Ruth treated Ava like a treasure, not a burden. Ava adored her, and for a while, that was enough to balance everything else. Then the spotlight shifted to Bella, Sandra's daughter, same age as Ava. In a sane universe, two little cousins would be treated equally. In theirs, Bella was treated like a minor celebrity, and Ava was treated like the friend's kid who got dragged along. Gift exchanges? Bella got dolls with hair longer than Ava's entire body, plus sparkly outfits, plus accessories. Ava got socks. Once she got a coloring book, because she doesn't need fancy things. When Ava asked why the presents were so different, Tessa told her some adults forget how to be fair. She did not tell her she wanted to fold those socks into a slingshot and fire them directly at Marilyn's forehead. Marilyn and Harold never missed a chance to compare the girls either. Bella was advanced. Bella was refined. Bella was clearly part of the family. Ava was quiet, or a bit sensitive. Tessa told herself it was irritating, not harmful. She told herself she could model grace. She told herself Ava didn't see it. Ava saw it. Then came the shift. The comments. The whispers that weren't whispers. "She doesn't look much like Jordan," Marilyn said once, too casually. Harold added, "Kids pick up traits from everywhere." Everywhere. Right. Sandra laughed like she was sharing an inside joke with the devil. Jordan heard some of it, enough to make him clench his jaw and mutter under his breath as they drove home. He hated it. He hated them. But the guilt, all that guilt, had wrapped around him like ivy. He'd say things like, "They don't mean it. They're old-fashioned. They don't know how to talk about things." But then the comments got bolder. "Are you sure she's yours, Jordan? You never know these days. We'd feel better if we had proof." Proof. Like Ava was a crime scene. At first, Tessa brushed it off because family says stupid things, right? Then she saw Ava's face one day when the girl overheard Harold say, "Maybe she has another father." Ava didn't cry. She just folded inward. Quiet. Confused. Bruised. Tessa felt something cold slide into place inside her. And then it happened. The moment the hints stopped being hints. "We want a DNA test," Harold said, looking directly at Tessa. She remembered thinking, this is the line. This is where we stop pretending. She didn't know it would get worse. She didn't know it was connected to something far bigger. Something with zeros at the end, something hidden in legal documents, something that explained why they'd suddenly gone from petty to vicious. Tessa thought the DNA question was the climax. It wasn't. It was just the start. If you've ever slammed a door behind you so hard it feels like it sealed a chapter of your life shut, that was Tessa and Jordan after Christmas at his parents' house. Except the chapter wasn't sealed. It was cracking open into an entirely new disaster. When they got home, the silence hit first. Not the peaceful kind. The kind where adrenaline is still in your teeth and your shoulders are stuck halfway between shaking and wanting to punch a wall. Ava went straight to the couch and curled up under her blanket. Jordan stood in the doorway like someone had unplugged him. Tessa leaned against the table and tried to remember how to breathe air that didn't taste like humiliation. Finally, he exhaled. "Tessa," he said, voice low and dangerous. "I'm done." "With them?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "With everything," he said. "The money, the help, the weekly visits. All of it." That snapped Tessa's brain out of its freeze mode. For years, Jordan had been sending his parents about $200 a month. Nothing outrageous, but enough that it was clearly more about guilt than assistance. He'd always shrugged and said things like, "It makes them feel supported," or, "It's just what you do." Now he walked to the counter, logged into his banking app, and canceled the transfer like he was cutting a rope that had been around his neck since childhood. "There," he said. "Done." Tessa didn't cheer. She didn't scold him. She didn't tell him he didn't have to, because honestly, he damn well did. Instead, she just said, "Good." They sat together quietly, watching Ava's chest rise and fall as she drifted into an exhausted sleep. She looked so small, so breakable, so undeserving of the cruelty she'd endured that night. "You know what hurts most?" Jordan whispered. "That they said it in front of her," Tessa answered instantly. He nodded, jaw clenching. "And that they meant it." She reached for his hand. He looked at her with the kind of expression that comes only when a man realizes his parents aren't just a bit much. They're toxic. Tessa wished that was the end of the night. But toxic people are like raccoons. The second you think they've given up, they're back on your porch knocking over your trash. Around 9:30 p.m., Jordan's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered and immediately straightened. Yes, this is him. Tomorrow morning? Sure, we'll be there." He hung up. His face was unreadable. "Who was that?" Tessa asked. "A lawyer," he said. "My grandmother's lawyer." That got her heartbeat going again. "Did he say what it's about?" "No, only that it's important, and she wants us to come." They both looked at Ava, still asleep, still holding the stuffed bear Ruth had gifted her, the only truly safe person on that side of the family. Tessa's stomach twisted. "Is Ruth okay?" "I think she's fine," Jordan said. "Just angry." Angry? Angry was new. They sat on the couch, whispering in the dim light, both pretending not to imagine the worst. But the truth hung between them. Marilyn and Harold had taken their obsession with belonging to a new level. There was a reason that DNA conversation had escalated so quickly. Something had triggered it. Something big. Jordan rubbed his face. "I know why this all started." Tessa turned to him. He swallowed. "A few months ago, my grandmother told me she wanted to leave Ava something. Not everything. Just a gift. Something small. She said Ava makes her happy. That she's kind." Tessa's breath caught. He went on. "My mother overheard, and she lost it. She told my grandmother it was irresponsible to leave money to a child who might not be blood." The room started spinning, and not in the fun amusement park way. "You're telling me," Tessa said slowly, "that this entire DNA obsession started because your mother didn't want Ava to inherit something?" Jordan nodded. "She told me, before any money goes to that child, we need proof." That child. That child. Tessa's hands curled into fists. She didn't even feel her nails digging into her palms. "So now they're trying to discredit her," she whispered, "to make sure she gets nothing." He nodded again. "And to make sure Bella gets everything." Of course. Of course Sandra and her daughter were involved in this circus. Tessa stood up, pacing. "So tomorrow, we meet the lawyer." "Yeah," Jordan said. "I think she's making changes." Tessa didn't know what that meant, but a cold, electric feeling went through her. Ruth was a sweet old woman who baked cookies and told stories about her youth. But she wasn't stupid. If she heard what had happened that night, she wouldn't let it go. The next morning, they dressed Ava for school in silence. The girl was quieter than usual, clinging to Tessa like she was trying to anchor herself. "Mom?" she whispered as Tessa tied her shoes. "Did Grandma say that because I don't look like Daddy?" Tessa's throat tightened. "No, baby," she said. "She said it because she's wrong." Ava nodded slowly, but Tessa saw it. The seed of doubt planted by people who should have protected her. They dropped Ava off, then drove to the law office. Tessa's hands were cold the whole ride. When they entered the meeting room, Ruth was already there, sitting straighter than Tessa had ever seen her, eyes bright, lips pressed tight like a woman on a mission. The lawyer introduced himself. Then he said the words that made Tessa's head spin. Ruth asked me to update her estate planning. Jordan blinked. Because of last night? Ruth nodded sharply. I won't tolerate what they said to that child. Not one bit. She went on, her voice soft but firm. They questioned her place in this family. They hurt her. And I won't allow people like that to inherit my life's work. Tessa stared at her. What are you saying? The lawyer slid a folder across the table. Ruth has approximately $3 million in assets, he said. She has chosen to divide that into 2 living trusts. Tessa's breath hitched. One trust names Jordan as beneficiary, he said. The other names Ava. She felt dizzy. And, he added, the house your in-laws currently live in legally belongs to Ruth. She has decided to place that property into the trusts as well. Jordan's jaw dropped. Oh, wow. Yes, Ruth said, eyes blazing. They will not be inheriting a single penny. Tessa sat there, stunned, unable to speak. Ruth reached for her hand. You and that little girl have been the only ones who visit me, who help me, who show kindness. I'm giving my life savings to the people who deserve it. Tessa couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. Her heart hammered like it was trying to break out of her chest. They drove home in stunned silence, each trying to process what had just happened. They had barely stepped through their front door when Tessa's phone lit up like a fire alarm. A call from Marilyn, then Harold, then Sandra, all back to back. Jordan picked up, and the screaming started. It wasn't just anger, it was panic. Real panic. Money-driven, house-losing panic. They had no idea this was only the beginning. After a family blows up, there's always a stretch of time where everything feels unstable, like you're waiting for whatever comes next. For Tessa and Jordan, it lasted 3 days. 3 days of Marilyn and Harold calling non-stop, alternating between wailing, screaming, guilt-tripping, and the ever-classic, "We were misunderstood." 3 days of Jordan looking at his phone like it was contaminated with radioactive stupidity before blocking another number. 3 days of Sandra texting him paragraphs that read like rejected pages from a soap opera script. 3 days of Ava growing quieter every time she overheard a voicemail notification. By the 3rd night, Tessa was done. Not angry done, calm done. The kind of done where your soul goes still. She sat at the kitchen table, watching Jordan mash his forehead into his palms like he was trying to iron out his brain. Jordan, she said, I'm doing the DNA test. His head jerked up. Tessa, no, you don't have to prove anything. I know. And she really did. She had 0 doubt. Because she'd been there. Obviously. But I need this off the table, Tessa said. Forever. And I want the results in writing so we can shove them into every one of their accusations' faces. He sighed, defeated. Okay. If it helps you feel in control, do it. Control. Funny word. Tessa had been without it for years when it came to his family. So once the samples were collected, she sealed the kit herself and dropped it in the mailbox the next morning like she was sending off a tiny grenade. And then things took another turn. She went to pick up Ava from school. She wasn't there. Not with her teacher. Not on the playground. Not inside the building. The secretary looked up from her desk with a tight smile. Oh, your in-laws picked her up today. Tessa's stomach turned to ice. My what? Your husband's parents, the woman said cheerfully. They're still listed on the authorized pickup list. Tessa had forgotten about that list, the one they'd filled out when Ava started school, back when the worst thing Marilyn had ever said was that Tessa's casserole was a bit unconventional. She called Jordan. No hello, no small talk. They took her. What? His voice cracked with a kind of rage Tessa had rarely heard. Your parents picked her up. I'm going there. I'm coming now. She didn't wait. She drove. Their front door swung open like they'd been waiting for her. "Tessa," Marilyn said, smiling with her entire face for the first time in probably 6 years. "Come in. You're going to love what we've done." Tessa walked inside. It looked like the toy aisle at Target had exploded. Brand new dolls, a scooter, 2 bags from a high-end kids' boutique, even a small indoor trampoline set up in their living room. And there was Ava, sitting on the couch, nervous, small, holding a giant stuffed unicorn like a shield. "Mom," she said softly, "they kept giving me things." Tessa looked at Harold. "We just want to make sure our granddaughter is happy," he said with a wide, fake proud smile. "We love her so much." Her dry humor activated like a defense mechanism. "Oh? That's new," Marilyn tutted. "Don't be dramatic, Tessa. We've always loved her. We're just showing it more." "Right. Showing it more. Because people always show love right after they've been cut out of a $3 million inheritance." Then Marilyn crouched in front of Ava and cupped her chin. "You'll tell your great-grandmother how much you love these gifts, right? She needs to know who really cares about you." Tessa's vision actually blurred. For a second, she wasn't sure if she was going to faint or commit a felony. Luckily, Jordan arrived before either could happen. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped the second he stepped inside. Harold straightened. "We're bonding with our granddaughter. You abducted her from school." "We picked her up," Marilyn corrected, "because you two have been unreasonable." Tessa said nothing. She was past words, past anger. Her fury had evolved into something cold and diamond hard. "Ava," Tessa said, "go get your backpack. We're leaving." The girl didn't hesitate. Marilyn's face twisted. "You are not leaving without taking her gifts. They're for her." "We don't want them," Jordan said. "You don't know what she wants," Harold yelled. Ava stepped behind Tessa's leg. "I want to go home." That was it. The moment the spell broke. They walked out. Marilyn shrieked behind them, "This isn't over!" Which, historically, is what people say right before it very much is. On the drive home, Ava was quiet. Then she said something that made Tessa's heart fold in on itself. "Mom, why do they only love me when they want something?" 8 years old. 8. No child should ever have to form that sentence. Tessa held her hand. "They don't know what love is, baby. But we do." Ava nodded slowly, but her eyes were full of storm clouds. That night, Tessa and Jordan drafted a cease and desist letter with help from a lawyer friend. They removed Marilyn and Harold from school contact lists, blocked every number, closed the door, hard. Then they told Ruth. She went silent, then furious, then determined. "I'm done," she said. "They won't get the chance to manipulate me or that child again." The next morning, she met with her lawyer. By afternoon, everything was finalized. Her trust, once revocable, became irrevocable. The house, the savings, every asset she owned, half to Jordan, half to Ava. No loopholes, no changes, no chances for Marilyn or Harold to claw their way back in. When the paperwork was done, Ruth called Tessa herself. "You're my family," she said. "They're not." Tessa cried after she hung up. Hard. Not because of the money, but because someone had finally chosen them. 2 days later, the DNA results arrived. A match as clear as daylight. Jordan's daughter. Exactly what they expected. They printed the report, attached it to the cease and desist, and sent copies to Marilyn and Harold. A few hours later, Jordan's phone rang. Blocked number. He didn't answer. A voicemail came through anyway. It was Marilyn, sobbing, begging, desperate. Exactly the sound people make when everything they tried to destroy turns out to be indestructible. Tessa didn't shout. She just listened. And finally, she felt free. It's been 3 months, and the fallout has been spectacular. Marilyn and Harold moved out of their house the same week the trust paperwork became official. Seeing the moving truck in their driveway felt like watching a chapter close itself. They tried one last guilt-filled voicemail, but Tessa and Jordan didn't respond. They were already done. Ava sleeps better now. Jordan smiles more. And Ruth? She's thriving with the peace she should have had years ago. So what do you think? Did Ruth do the right thing disinheriting her own daughter? Or did she go too far? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe for more.